Okay, Tractate Sotah, we're back. We're still in the first chapter, page 6, and the name of the chapter is called Hamekane, the one who is warned his wife, or has jealousy, therefore warned her. So we ended off yesterday with the Torah says that she goes out of his house and she becomes a wife to someone else. So when it comes to, in case of Sotah, in case of a woman that we're not sure if she was defiled or not, if she contaminated herself or not, so we said that if the husband died, then we're not sure what happened, because she doesn't have to drink the water anymore. The whole idea of water is to create peace between a husband and wife. Once the husband died, so what's the point of checking her? But she doesn't do, meaning that if the brother is around, he doesn't do yibum, he does chalit. So the Gemara says, why not? If she's allowed to marry another man, let her maybe marry also the brother. But according to that, she should not be permitted to marry any other man. Why? Because she can destroy his house. So he answered him, we're not forcing him. He chose that specific wife. Are we casting on her on the other man against his will? No, he marries her willingly. But in case of Yibum, it might be like, in a way, like forcing him, because it's a mitzvah to do the Yibum. The Pasuk called them Acher, gives them the name Acher, the other person. Why? Shem ben Zuga Sharishon. It says, why did the guy divorce her to begin with, the first guy? Because she was promiscuous, she had all these things. So, you're taking a wicked woman out of your house, and then comes another man and brings her into his house. And yet you state that one should that she should even be taken in yibum. What's the common sense behind it? If she married another person and the second husband later dies childless, then she should not be taken in yibum, because Scripture called this person that died acher. She certainly is subject to yibum. It says, since Scripture would call also the yavam of the second husband another man is still called acher, yet she certainly is subject to yibum. Gabi deho mio b'shem tov havakaimo. At least with regard to the second man, she maintained a good reputation. First man, she didn't have such a good reputation. The second man, she had good reputation. The Gemara cites an altogether different source of the Mishnah's prohibition against a suspected Sotah being taken in Yibum. Amar Rava Amar Kal V'Chomer, Sotah's exemption from Yibum is derived from a Kal V'Chomer argument as follows. Im nesel b'mutar lo, if the suspected Sotah becomes prohibited to one who was permitted to her originally, her husband, ba'asur la, then to one who was forbidden to her originally, the husband's brother, lo kol sheken, is it not all the more so that she is be forbidden? Amar le'abai l'ma'ata kohen gadol shekir almana u'meis, kohen gadol, high priest, and marries a widow, almana, and he died. V'yesh lo ach kohen edet, and he has a brother that is he's a Kohen, but he's not a Kohen Gadol. The widow should not be taken to Yibum. Why?
Because it was illegal, it wasn't a kosher.
A Kohen, a regular Kohen, is allowed to marry a widow.
I know.
But in this case,
right, this is different.
Since the Kohen Gadol married her in a prohibitive way,
right,
he was not supposed to marry her, because the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. The widow should not be taken. For we make the Kal V'Chomer argument, if the widow became prohibited to one who was permitted to her originally, her husband, the Kohen Gadol, but also lo kol sheken, then to the one who was forbidden to her originally, the husband's brother, lo kol sheken, is she not all the more so forbidden? She was forbidden to the husband, to the Kohen Gadol. How much more so she will be forbidden to him? Gemara says, Nesel, the widow, was forbidden, became forbidden to the Kohen Gadol. He didn't become forbidden to the Kohen Gadol. She was always forbidden to him. She was prohibited to him all along. Mutala, furthermore, are you saying that the widow has become prohibited to one who was permitted to her originally? Furthermore, are you saying that the widow has become prohibited to one
Prohibited to one who was permitted to her originally.
to one who was permitted to her originally? Asur lahu, he was always asur to her. She was never really permitted to him.
Right.
Ella, because a Kohen Gadol cannot, a high priest can never marry a almona, a widow.
Right.
Ella Aisha's Kohen shenen, so rather what happens with a Kohen's wife who was violated, she was raped, and thus became forbidden to him. Umeis, and shortly thereafter, since he divorced her, the husband died childless.
No, it says before he divorced her.
Yeah, and
husband
shortly
died
thereafter, before he divorced her, the husband died childless.
Look at this. This is interesting.
But this doesn't say a Kohen Gadol. It says
No,
Kohen Shenenser, Kohen's wife who was violated.
Right, so she's
for-
asked her.
and Umeis, and shortly thereafter, before he divorced her, he didn't have a chance to divorce his wife, and he died. Ve'yesh lo acholol, and he has a brother, it's cholol, lo tisyabim. The widow should not be taken in yibum.
Right.
For we can make the same kavachomer argument. If neso mutar lo, if because of the forced cohabitation, that she was raped, the widow become prohibited to the one who was permitted to her originally, to her husband. Was permitted to her originally because of the rape, is not prohibited to her. But also then one who was forbidden to her at the time of the cohabitation, the husband's brother, lo kol sheken, how much more so? But this is specifically, it says yeshlo acholol. He has a brother who is a cholol, meaning that he has a brother from his same father, but from a mother that was maybe divorced,
right,
that was not supposed to. So maybe his stepmother was not was not allowed to be married to the father. But the bottom line, he has a brother from him. This Kohen has a brother called, he's a Chalal. He's not Kohen. He's not Yisrael, not Levi, and is profaned. His possible kahuna, priesthood, was profaned. So he's not allowed to marry the wife of the Kohen.
maybe
the raped wife.
as a yibam he couldn't marry, but as a regular.
It says yesh lo acho lo tisyabim. The widow should not be taken in yibum.
Right.
For we can make the same kavachomer. Even as so mutar, if the widow became prohibited to the one who was permitted to her originally, her husband, but also the one who was forbidden to her. But Kol Sheken is not also. The Gemara answers, Rava rejects the analogy as well. He says, Oine b'Yisrael mishra shori. Violated woman is surely permitted to Yisrael, non-Kohen.
Right.
Vegabe de'ai mi olei kaisua. And
Right.
so regarding this brother, the cholo, there's no prohibition whatsoever.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay.
The previous Mishnah had taught that a presumptive sotah is temporarily barred from eating truma, pending resolution of her status through the test of bitter waters. The women listed in this Mishnah, however, are permanently forbidden to eat truma because their guilt is established, or because they will not or cannot prove their innocence by drinking the bitter waters. And these women are forbidden to partake of truma. One who says to her husband, I'm defiled to you. She tells her husband straight out. Or there was witnesses, they came along and testified that she is defiled. Or one is he's suspecting her, she went through warning and seclusion, the whole thing, and then she says, I'm not drinking these waters. I understand the procedure, I don't want to drink the water. She is not allowed to eat truma, and maybe the husband doesn't want her to drink. He's maybe not okay with what she did, but he wants to continue his life. So therefore, he's not asking her to drink the water, and now she's not allowed to eat truma. Or if they're on the way to Yerushalayim, they're going to drink the bitter water. She's going to drink it, and somehow they made up on the way. This was taught to us by Rav Sheshes. And he enlightened our eyes for us from our Mishnah. What did Rav Sheshes say? If it's a Sotah, but about whom there are witnesses overseas who indeed saw her commit adultery with a suspected adulterer, but it was in Medina Sam, it was overseas. The bitter water don't test her. My time, the Omar Kro, what's the reason? Because the pasuk says only when there is no witness. The leika the other bo, where there is no one who knows about her, whether in fact she was defiled or not. But over here there is a case where someone knows, someone saw, so the water will not test her. And he enlightened our eyes from the Mishnah. Witnesses came and testified that she is defiled. Also, Eidim Emas, when did the witnesses come? Ema Neima Mekamid Shishti. We say that before she drinks the bitter waters. Zoinoi, and then she is confirmed adulteress, and there is no need for the Mishnah to teach that she may not eat the truma. Ela levosel. Rather, it comes to tell us that the witnesses came after she drank the water. And the reason why the water didn't test her is because that she had witnesses. Ela yom abishlomayin boitkin oiso shapir. It is well understood if you say that the waters do not examine her, if there are witnesses somewhere. Ela yom atmayim boitkin oiso. If you said the water do test her, even if there is witnesses, let the matter be revealed in retrospect that these are false witnesses, and that's why the water did not test her. Surely the determination of the bitter waters promised by the Torah should be more authoritative than the testimony of two witnesses. We should therefore discredit the witnesses as liars and allow her to continue eating truma. The fact that the Mishnah does accept the witnesses proves Rav Shesh's assertion that the waters are rendered ineffective where there exist witnesses who have seen her commit adultery. If there is witnesses, it does not test her water. The water do not test her. Rav Yosef said, 6a4. In fact, I can tell you that waters do indeed examine her, even where there are witnesses overseas. And in this case, you can say that he had schus. A merit temporarily holds the punishment in abeyance for her. In what point do they, Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef, argue? Misnavno de Rabbi. They argue about whether the rabbis hold the wasting away of Rabbi. What does it mean? That now Rabbi Emer's chustol b'mayim merit holds the lethal effect of the bitter waters in abeyance, and she neither bears children nor continues to thrive, but waste away progressively. In the end, she dies that very death that she would have died had she not possessed the merit of Sheshes Sova bein leRabbi uben leRabbon ave misnavno. Both according to Rabbi and according to the rabbis, she would immediately begin to waste away. Rav Yosef Sova, Rav Yosef, however, holds leRabbi ave misnavno leRabbon ave misnavno. According to Rabbi, she would immediately begin to waste away, as Rabbi says explicitly. And according to Rabbon, according to the rabbis, she would not waste away. Accordingly, we could say that our Mishnah reflects the view of the rabbis, and the reason the Mishnah validates the testimony of the witnesses, despite the fact that she shows no ill effects of the bitter waters, is that we assume that her merits have suspended her punishment. According to the Mishnah, in no way proves of Shesh's assertion that the very existence of witnesses negates the effect of the bitter waters. Masir Rav Shimon Barashi, Rabbi Shimonim, Ein Schus Tolemayim Mori, Mary does not hold the effects of the bitter waters in abeyance. If you say that Mary does hold the lethal effects of the bitter waters, you undermine the aura, the greatness of the waters in the minds of all the women who must drink. And you are now defame the waters in the minds of all women who must drink, because people will say she did it, she just had some schus, and that's why she was not, that's why she didn't die by it. People will say that they were in fact defiled, but merit held the punishment in abeyance. Now, if Rav Shesha's ruling is true, and she has witnesses overseas, even those who are taharos and drank the water, you are saying Shem Ra, you are giving defaming bad name to those who drink. You say it doesn't mean anything. They probably had just the fact that they drank and nothing happened to them means nothing, because it could be that they had witnesses overseas. Rabbi Shimon according to Rabbi Shimon, schus doesn't help you. It comes to adultery, it comes to the bitter water, and not and Eidim would not help you. Since merit does not suspend the punishment, because this would undermine the intended impact of the Sotah procedure, overseas witnesses also do not suspend the punishment. Rav Sheshes, however, stated his ruling according to the opinion of the rabbis, who maintain that the merit does suspend the punishment and are not concerned that this would diminish the dread of bitter waters or defame the innocent woman who have survived the taste. Masiv Rav and these are the ones whose menachos, the mincha offering, the flour offering, must be burnt. One who says I'm defiled, and one about whom witnesses come and testify that she is defiled. Since the waters are not administered to such a sotah, the procedure is halted. Her mincha cannot be offered on the altar and is burnt instead. Also, edim ema, so just because she prepared already the mincha, it was designated, it has consecration, and therefore it needs to be burned. It cannot be used because we know already that we're not going through the process. She is defiled. If you say that they came before the mincha, before the mincha was sanctified, the mincha should go out as a chulin, a non-sanctity through redemption. Rather, we must say that the witnesses came to testify after the mincha was sanctified in clay shows. Now, the Mishnah's ruling that the mincha must be burnt in this case is well understood if you say that the waters would examine her, even if there are witnesses overseas who can attest to her guilt, as long as she drinks before they testify. Accordingly, the mincha is eligible to be sanctified and offered on the altar despite the existence of these witnesses. And when it was originally sanctified in the clay shores, so it touches the serving vessels, the consecrated vessels, it becomes holy. Shaper Kadush, it was validly sanctified. And that's why her offering is being burnt. If you say the water is not testing her, let the matter be revealed in retrospect. When you placed the water, it was a mistake. Placing the water was a mistake. And accordingly, the mincha should not be burnt. It should rather go out to go out of its sanctified state to a state of non-sanctity. The case of the Mishnah is where the witnesses testified that she committed adultery in the temple courtyard after the mincha had been sanctified in clay shores. Rabbi Dechi Kodesh Meiko, so when the mincha was originally sanctified, Shaper Kodesh, it was validly sanctified, since the seclusion for which she is drinking is not what the witnesses are testifying about.
If they thought to do this, why you bother?
Since the seclusion for which she is drinking is not what the witnesses are testifying about. It says in 11, that is, the witnesses who testify that she has committed adultery have no knowledge about whether she became defiled during seclusion for which her husband had brought her to the temple. Rather, they testify that they saw her commit adultery in the temple courtyard itself after the mincha. So it's like a separate case. Matkif Shayo objected, how is it possible that she committed adultery? She was accompanied by the young Kohanim. Young Kohanim would escort her around the temple courtyard for the duration of the bitter waters procedure. How then could she possibly be committed adultery? So the Gemara says, she committed adultery with the young Kohanim themselves. So the Gemara presents an alternative scenario. She, in a case where she needed to relieve herself and wanted to go to the bathroom, in that case, the Kohanim would grant her the privacy needed to allow her to tend to her needs. For do you think that the young Kohanim are hanging from her head covering so that she should not evade them? It says in 12, this is the interpretation of Rashi. So, in other words, they are exposed to her. They're exposed to her cravings, and it doesn't mean that she would. It would stop her from trying. Do you think that the young Kohanim are hanging from her head covering so that she should not evade them? In fact, I will tell you, as we said originally, that the witnesses testified about her defilement during the seclusion for which her husband has brought her to the temple, which indeed occurred prior to the sanctification of mincha. And the reason why he said the mincha should go out of its sanctified state to a state of non-sanctity, because we have a concern that maybe people will say, as a preventive measure, lest people say that we may remove sanctified offerings from service vessel to revert to a state of non-sanctity. So, if a mincha became tameh before it was sanctified in a service vessel, it is like all other menachas that became tameh before being sanctified in kli shores, and it may be redeemed. But it became tameh after it was sanctified in a service vessel. It is like all the other menachas have became tameh after being sanctified in a clay shores, and must be burnt. If the kohemetz was sanctified, he and the kohen did not manage to offer it on the altar until the husband or the wife died. The mincha is like all the other menachas that became disqualified after the kohemetz is removed and sanctified in a clay shores, but before it is offered on the altar and it must be burned. So in general, again, the whole idea of testing her was to bring a peace between the husband and the wife. If one of them died, even though the whole procedure is almost there, the mincha is prepared, but the mincha, there's no reason to offer the mincha because it's not clarifying anything. It's not, a procedure is null and void. So, but still the mincha was sanctified, so you need to burn it. The kometz was already, the mincha was flour, fine flour. The part of it was placed on the altar. What happened if that portion was already placed on the altar? And the Kohen did not manage to eat the leftovers until either the husband or the wife died, because that leftover would go to the Kohen. So it says, so the mincha is like all the other menachos, and it may be eaten by the Kohanim. Although it emerges that the mincha never served as a part of the bitter waters procedure, it is not regarded as disqualified offering, because to begin with, it comes only for the sake of determining a doubt. What's a doubt? Whether the woman has committed adultery, and indeed it has accomplished its sacrificial purpose of following for the determination of her doubt, and has gone along its way. It has already fulfilled its objective prior to the death of the husband or wife. Atonement was accomplished. Witnesses came and testified that she is defiled. Mincha so mincha must be burnt. If the witness against her, those who testified that she had secluded herself, was suspected with a suspected adulterer, after being warned by her husband against doing so, we found that they were zomim, they were discredited. Her mincha chulin or mincha is non-sacred. Mincha chulin, her mincha is non-sacred, even if it has already been sanctified in a clay shoas. So we see then that there is no rabbinic decree to burn offering that were mistakenly sanctified in a clay shoas. Are you saying that the case involving Zemim witnesses, discredited witnesses, disapproves of Papa? The case are not comparable. The irregularities in the Sotah procedure caused by the Zemim witness, by this discredited witnesses, are widely known. Everyone realizes that now that the seclusion witnesses have been proven false by Zemim, they were discredited. This Sotah's mincha was never sanctified to begin with, as her seclusion witnesses, who are the basis for the procedure, have been known to be false. There was no need for the rabbis to decree that it should be burnt, lest people think that physical sanctity can be deconsecrated. The law that the mere existence of witnesses who saw the Sotah commit adultery nullifies the entire procedure, however, is not common knowledge. Hence, if we would allow the mincha to be treated as non-sacred, in that case, people mistakenly conclude that even physical sanctity can be deconsecrated. So when it comes to seclusion witnesses that were discredited, it has kola, it's widely known. Comes to adultery, witnesses who saw the Sotah commit adultery is not common knowledge. Tanakov Seder Rav Sheshes. A Baisa was taught in accordance with Rav Sheshes, v'lav min taimei, but not because of his reason given above. The Baisa reads to Hoira. The verse states, but if the woman had not become defiled, and she is pure, then she shall be innocent from punishment, and she'll bear seed, right? So all the blessings will come to a woman after she is verified to be pure. Only a Sotah who is indeed pure will bear seed as a result of her drinking and being saved from the waters. But not one about whom there are witnesses overseas, who although she too survives the waters, does not bear seed as a result. Uter and pure teaches that only a woman who is pure will bear seed, but not one who was spared from the effects of the bitter waters on account of a merit that she possessed, which temporarily suspended her punishment. The expression "she is pure" teaches that only a woman who is indeed pure will bear seed, but not one who was spared from the effects of the bitter waters because the perception of her guilt was so widespread that even the women who spin thread by the light of the moon gossip about her. It says in 36, a woman whose guilt is so widely assumed is not tested by her drinking of bitter waters. If it's a common knowledge, again, the whole idea of the
she's a road runner. Everybody knows she's a road runner.
The whole idea of the bitter water is to verify to the husband that she's innocent. But if she is a road runner or a cougar, then the waters are not going to do anything.
Because everybody knows already.
Yeah, it's not clarifying anything.
It's only about it because it's suffered.
In light of this Baisa's exposition, the Gemara returns to a question of Rabbi Shimon's view. Rabbi Shimon who maintains that the merit does not hold the Sotah's punishment in abeyance. Nehi devov loy dorish, granted that he disagrees with the Baisa and he does not expound the extra letter vav. Utehoroi. He does not the uter or just tehoroi. He does not says no special teaching by utehoroi. Raika, but there is. The Gemara says, but there is. Vaiko yesh lo edim b'din sayam. The case of we have the case. What do we have? The case of one who has witnesses about her overseas, where the effects of the waters are negated, unbeknown to us. Since the Baita just cited has derived Rav Shesh's ruling that overseas witnesses negate the effect of the bitter waters from a scriptural superfluity, we can no longer say, as we did above, that Rabbi Shimon would disagree, for he would then have no way of accounting for that scriptural superfluity. Rather, Rabbi Shimon must agree, even though that the possibility of negating the water's effects would cause a defamation of the innocent Sotah who drank, does this then not disapprove Rabbi Shimon's basic contention that there cannot exist a law that would cause the defamation of innocent Sotah? The Gemara says, Loi shechicha. The Gemara answers that situation is not common.
All right, we'll start with the mission tomorrow night.
It says in number 2, Rabbi Shimon indeed agrees that the existence of witnesses will negate the effect of the waters, but since it is quite uncommon that there are witnesses overseas who have seen her actual defilement, people will not consider that remote possibility. Rather, they will assume that a Sotah who has survived the bitter waters is indeed innocent. Rabbi Shimon can still posit that that there cannot be a common event such as delaying power of merit that would negate the effect of the waters, for that would lead to a defamation of the innocent Sotah who have drunk the water and survived. Bruchim Tiyu, should all have a good Moed and a good Yom Tov, Shvisha Pesach, should merit to the revelation of Mashiach speedily nowadays. I think tonight we have a custom not to sleep. Try to learn Torah all night. So, Bruchim Tiyu, all the best.